Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
Welcome to the Play and Record podcast, brought to you by Live from the Groove. You can find these podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music and more. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Huge thanks to everyone supporting, sharing and keeping the vibe alive. Now let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Play and Record podcast with me, Al English. Thank you very much for listening to the previous episodes, if you've been so kind. And also thanks to Ben Hamill for being the guest on the last episode. If you can hear these strange snoring noises throughout today's episode, it's not me. I haven't turned into a narcoleptic. I've got my pug, Ted, my best buddy, sat on my knee. I tried to record this about 10 minutes ago and he kept scratching on my door, so I've had to let him in. So he's now sat on my knee. So yeah, if you hear that typical pug noise, just roll with it. So I think where we left off last time was about university time. Ben had gone to university in Salford doing English, and I decided to go to a place called the School of Sound Recording, which sounded a bit more appropriate for me. And it wasn't far actually from Manchester Piccadilly, just down the road on Downing Street, and everyone used to call it SSR for short. It's still there actually. I drove past it the other day, but it's called Spirit Studios now. It was a dead kitted out building, really sort of new, modern, and I signed up to do a foundation degree in sound engineering and design. The course was twinned with Bolton University, strangely enough, so I've still never really understood why I had to do this, but I spent 3 days a week in Manchester at the recording studios learning the interesting stuff, and then there was I think there was 2 afternoons at Bolton Uni learning all these key skills, you know, getting us to learn English skills and basic IT skills. It was really weird. I think being a 19-year-old sort of thrown into the university environment, it was a bit strange because I was obviously bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in my life, but this was the time when everyone was being pushed into university. It's a little bit different now because, I've seen people who are my age and they've got multiple degrees and they are working just normal jobs that you just don't need anywhere near those qualifications to do. So I think it was a time looking back when it was pushed on you really. You've got to go to university. Everyone else is going to university. And I think if I would have sat back and thought about it, I probably would have thought, maybe not. But you're much younger and you're sort of led by what everyone else is doing a lot more, so I signed up to do this degree. In the class, there was a mad mix of people, as there often is in university. There was a lot of mature students, which is interesting because looking back on it now, where I'm probably the same age as some of those students, I would say that I would probably embrace it a lot more now. I'd find it a lot more interesting. I'd be a lot more comfortable with myself and just life in general than you are when you're 19 and you don't know your arse from your elbow, pardon the expression. But it's true, so a lot more people in the class were quite comfortable with this sort of learning and stuff, whereas for me it was a bit bizarre. It's obviously at that age you're totally comfortable driving into Manchester, finding your way around, and it's fine when it would be absolutely fine now, but when you're 19, for me at least, it was quite nerve-wracking, even just the concept of getting yourself into Manchester, finding out where the place is, and there were no sat navs or anything where you could just put it in your phone now, couldn't you, and it would literally lead you there, whereas you had to actually think in those days, okay, I'll go here, I'll go there, and you had to plan out what you were doing, and it was quite overwhelming really. Well, it was very overwhelming. So I would spend 1 year in total doing this degree. I did learn quite a lot of things. In honesty, looking back on it, I think my opinion of my own skills was quite inflated at that point. I thought I was a lot better than I actually was, and I felt like I didn't need to learn certain things, whereas again now, with a more mature sort of mindset, I would just learn everything because it's only going to make you stronger, isn't it? And that's currently sort of how I do things now, is just I soak it all up. So I was like really distracted at this point in my life because I was going out partying a lot. I'd stay up all the way through the weekend with my friends, and yeah, I'd just roll into uni on the Monday morning, not cut out for any sort of learning, and I just didn't give it the respect that it deserved. I was also seeing this girl. She was from Gorton in Manchester, and yeah, it was like she was from a completely different planet than I was. Like, even though it was only like say 20 minutes away from where I lived, you know, she might as well have been from a different universe. And yeah, I got my head so far up my ass that I decided to quit this university degree. And listen to this, so I was 19, right? I am now currently, as I speak now, I am 39 years of age, and I am still paying it off. Let me just say that again. I went to uni for 1 year. 1 year when I was 19. I'm now 39, and I am still paying off that 1 year debt. All the interest. Anyway, that could be a podcast in itself, a rather boring and shit one that I could probably sell to LBC, but let's just leave that on the shelf there, just because it is quite a shocking fact, I think. So I quit uni, my head were up my ass, my parents were not really happy, and I had to get a job. Up to this point, I just had little part-time jobs. While I was at uni, college, I was working in the local co-op supermarkets, part-time, but I'd never had a full-time job. So I'm just going to have a little run through some of the jobs that I attempted and failed at during this time. I saw a job advertised about a mile away up the road at a place called Broker Direct. They were some sort of insurance brokers, as the name would suggest. And yeah, what I knew about insurance at 20 years old was probably as much as I know about insurance now. And yeah, just the word insurance, saying that to me at 20 years old was just, I mean, saying it to me now is awful, but it sounds so boring, and it was. So my job at this place called Broker Direct, I'd been there for about 1 day and I was getting trained up. I was in this office with all these people who were talking all the office gossip, and everyone was just on the phone, and all I could hear was ring ring, hi, what's your policy number please? Ring ring, hello, can I take your policy number? Policy number, policy number, policy number, policy. Honestly, it was an eye-opener, and basically that they were training me to do that job. It's be like a phone drone, just sit there and just say the same thing over and over again all day. And I just thought, I can't do this. I can't do it. And I looked around, and it was a bit sad really, because some of these people were like middle-aged, some of them were like young like me, some of them were in between, you know, whatever, and everyone was just getting on with it, and some of them looked happy. And I just thought, this is not me. And I just told him, I said, excuse me, I'm just going to have a little break, I'm going to go out for a cigarette. And he said, oh, okay, no problem, because I smoked back then a little bit. I went out, I had a cigarette, and I just decided I wasn't coming back. Terrible form from me. It wasn't the greatest move, but it illustrated just how like overwhelmed I was inside. The thought of actually going in there and saying, sorry, I'm going to have to leave this. I didn't have enough room in my brain to even process doing something as simple as that. So I just decided that I had to bail. Running away from my problems is not the best thing to do, and to be fair, I haven't really done it since. But yeah, I had no choice at that moment. I quit the job, and yeah, I got straight on the train to go and see Ben Hamill, because I didn't want to tell my parents that I'd had this job for a few hours and decided that it wasn't for me, because I was in for another bollocking basically. So I decided that I was just going to go to Ben's and get drunk instead. So do you ever get one of them moments where you need something and something is given to you? For example, this happened to me that day. I got off the train, I think I bought like a 6-pack of beers and I had like one on the train, and then I'd come off at Salford and I was walking to where Ben lived. He didn't live at Castle Irwell at this point, he lived at another building on, is it Eccles Road or something? He got his own sort of house. So I was heading over there and I got this call from an agency, and I answered the call and they straight away offered me a full-time job at RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland, in an office building which was right next to Bolton Wanderers Reebok Stadium. Now, if someone would have offered me this job a week ago, I probably would have said no, because me and numbers do not add up. Like I really struggled to get any sort of qualification in maths. I think I got a C in maths, but I really had to try. I'm convinced to this day that I'm like numerically dyslexic, because even when I'm booking gigs, I'll mess dates up, and numbers just jump around on the page in front of me. So I blagged my way into this job. So I was able then to say to my mum and dad at the end of the day, hey, I walked out of my job at Broker Direct, and then watch the faces turn to anger, and then I go, but it's okay, because I've got another job at Royal Bank of Scotland, and I start on Monday or whatever. So that pulled me right out of the shit. So I started at RBS the following week, working for an agency as another phone drone, and it must have been about a week before I messed this one up, because as I mentioned before, I was staying up late all the time, and the partying by this point was getting out of control. I couldn't control it at all. There's no other way to put it. I was just heavily addicted at this point to just going out all the time. I can remember falling asleep at my desk and putting my hand over my eyes so it looked like I was reading a piece of paper or something, but everyone must have known I was just asleep. So yeah, that didn't last long. I had like an appraisal, and I got really shafted on it. Fair dues, because I was shit at my job, and I think I had to like transfer someone. At one point I had to transfer. This was the time before like online banking had really taken off, so customers would ring up and say, hello, can I transfer £300 from my savings account, please? And I'd go, yeah, I'd do all the checks. And anyway, I'd only done a couple of these before, and I'd they were quite simple. And then I think it was the third one I did, someone wanted £30 transferring, and I pressed another zero, so I transferred 300. But then they made me, they said, right Alex, you're going to have to ring this customer up now and apologise. And I was just really reluctant to do it. Again, now I wouldn't give a shit, I'd just ring them up. But then as like a 20-year-old, I was like, well, you haven't really trained me properly. I wouldn't have made this mistake if you hadn't, I tried like challenging it, didn't go well. And then they fucked me off, fair enough. So that was the end of that. Now I can't really remember the order of these next jobs, so I'm just going to sort of talk about them. They were both agency jobs, so which worked quite well for me because they handled everything. Yeah, they took a little slice, but really they did all the legwork, and they found me the job, which was the difficult part as far as I was concerned. So yeah, I did a bit at this place called, I think it was a construction agency. I don't want to say the name in case it's still going, but it was a construction agency in Bury, just next to Bolton. So people would ring up and see our advertisements, and we'd get them construction jobs and stuff like that. But it was at this point sort of like my idealism, let's call it that, would sort of kick in. because certain things like just used to itch at me. And we'll talk more about idealism probably in the next episode where it really gets a grip of me. But let me give you an example. So at this construction agency, I was told to put out adverts for jobs in papers and whatever, and online things and directories. So I would say, plasterer needed in the Eccles area of Salford. Must be experienced, blah, blah, blah. So I was told to put these adverts up, fair enough. But then I later found out that these adverts were advertising jobs that didn't exist. And what we were doing was we were getting plasterers' details. So, Bill the plasterer would ring up and say, hello, I'd like the plastering job, please. And then I'd say, okay, let me take your details. And then I'd take his details and I just wouldn't ring him back. But then next time a plastering job did come up somewhere, we'd give Bill a ring, which is, as far as I'm concerned, fucking naughty. I don't think you'd be able to get away with that these days. I do think that's how the majority of agencies were operating. But yeah, it itched at me. And again, I think I sort of said something, and from that point onwards, I didn't really get along with the woman who was running it. So that was the end of that. Now the next one is actually better. It was a much more enjoyable job. It fit my skill set a lot more. In fact, there was two a little bit like this. The first one, actually, let's start with this one. The first one was during the 6-week holidays. It was only a temporary job, but it was at a high school, and it was supporting the site manager, or caretaker as we called them then. Obviously, in 6-week holidays, all the kids are out of school, and there's a long list of stuff that needs repainting, fixing, sweeping, you name it. There's a million and one fixer-upper jobs to do around like a decent-sized high school. So, my job was different every day. I'd learn a lot of new skills. I'd be painting something one day, I'd be cleaning something out the next. There was so many different things I'd be doing. I'd be throwing out old monitors, replacing them with the new ones, helping the construction people. It just kept me interested, and I'm convinced that I've got ADHD these days, and I'm on this 3,000-year NHS waiting list to actually find out if it's true, for no other reason than I just want to know. But yeah, I think like the office jobs, they were just so soul destroying for me because they were just so repetitive. Whereas a job like this, I was getting about, learning new things, using my hands, being practical, and really enjoyed it. Downside was it was only a temporary placement, and there was no chance of doing this all the time. But had I done something like this earlier on, it probably would have shown me that office work was not for me. I also had another job which was office based, but we did get on because it was interesting. It was for the Bury Council security and response team. Yeah, so I think they're called PCSOs now. Community support officers. They're like sort of police that don't have all the authority as like normal police or standard police, however you want to put it. But they support the communities and they get around. So it was my job to take their reports that they had filled from the previous day, record them and file them. Because again, this was not done on paper. It wasn't even on computers at this point. So it was dead interesting getting to read all their reports. So it was Officer Smith, 2 a.m. on the whatever estate, chasing off someone trying to steal lead off a roof. I chased him and followed him up to this street, and then they were interested, and there were lots of cool things that I got to see. Like there was this estate in Bury called the Dicky Bird Estate, and they had this little flat set up which was basically spying on the entire estate. So the police would come into this like derelict looking flat, and it was just rigged full of security equipment, keeping an eye on the whole estate, making sure everything was legit. And it was like, woo, a proper eye opener. But again, the downside was it was only a temporary job. It was only supposed to be 6 months, but we got along that well, me and the boss, that he extended it for as long as he could. I think I got about 10 months out of it before it eventually came to an end. But yeah, again, really enjoyable that. I was also making money at this point, sort of doing little DJ gigs for people, 21st, 18th, that sort of thing. I hadn't altogether given up on the idea of making a career from music. The closest job I ended up finding that matched my interests was a place called Maplin. You might remember Maplin Electronics. Basically like a tech shop. You had a lot of technology in there. You could buy everything from, capacitors, fuses, to cables, computers, high-tech toys, satellite dishes, blank CDs and DVDs, DJ equipment, PA systems, microphones, lighting systems. So, alright, it wasn't perfect, but at least it was in the same ballpark as music, right? And I actually found out while working here that I was a fair salesman. My dad was a salesman for a while. He used to sell cars. Don't hold that against him. They weren't second-hand cars. I don't know if that makes it any better, because I don't know, you say the second-hand car salesman is somehow worse than the new car salesman. Or maybe that's just what I think, because he was my dad. Maybe that's how I justified it. But yeah, I sort of learned that I had a bit of a sales gene while working at this job, and I had a lot of customers who would just come in and ask for me and stuff, and I would be honest with them. I would say, they would say, which one shall I buy? Shall I buy this one, or shall I buy this one? And I'd say, well, to be honest, I say, this one is 10 quid dearer, but this one will do exactly the same thing, and they'd appreciate that, and then they'd come back and then they'd buy more. So even though I'd sort of sold them the cheaper product, I'd actually give them the insight, and and they appreciated that. I used to have lots of regular customers coming in. One customer was a big bloke called Charlie Barrett. Now, I was aware of Charlie Barrett, as was everyone in the Bolton music scene. As previously mentioned in an earlier episode, Charlie was involved with the Blackout Crew. The Blackout Crew were Bolton's answer to the So Solid Crew, but instead of being like a garagey sort of sound, it was donk.
I want to put a banging donk on it. Yeah, that's sick, that is sick. I can definitely drop to that one.
Even though donk was not my thing at all in any way, shape or form, I couldn't deny the grip that it seemed to have on the town. The Blackout Crew were featured, I think, in a pot noodle advert. They also had a single which did really well up here. And I was looking at Charlie and I was thinking, maybe this guy can help me with my music. So when Charlie would come in, he would buy rafts of blank CDs and DVDs, which I would later be burning for him in their hundreds and thousands. But yeah, Charlie would come in, we'd have chats, and I'd tell him that I was a rapper and I also was a producer. I actually brought a CD in. I'd have this CD in my cloakroom in my coat, just for the next time that he came in. And the next time that he did, I would nip in the back and I'd give him the CD. That was a CD of me and Ben. It was a simple sample CD. And a week or so later, Charlie came back in and he headed straight for me. We got talking and he asked me how I fancied going working at his place, which was the Harmony Youth Project. Now, anyone in Bolton at that time would have heard of the Harmony Youth Project. It was the place that the Blackout Crew were born. It was directly above a place that I used to rehearse with my old band, so I knew exactly where it was, and I thought, yes, this is it. So after 6 reasonably happy months at working at Maplin, which is now long since gone into administration, I started working for Charlie at Harmony Youth Project in Halliwell. I was now a youth worker. This was the start of 10 years working with young people, and it is a very good place to leave it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's not really been a very musical episode, but it is still part of the story, so it's all relevant. Big shouts to everybody listening. Thank you very much. Make sure you like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the Play and Record podcast.